The Shiloh is the Eida Nishmas, my father, Ovri Moiri, Rav Pesach Moshe ben Ephraim, Zecha Tzalik Avracha. Today is his yortzeit. It's also Leila Nishmat Nechama bat Sari Imenu. Leila Nishmas Raphael ben Moshe. Leila Nishmas, my mother Rivka bas Yitzchak Isaac, and my dear son Orsha Shmulchaim and Yona Ephraim, and Esther bas Sarah. Tzvi Dov ben Chaim Pesach. David ben Atan, Amichai ben Yaakov Devora, Mata Leah bat Elio, Leah bat Simcha. Shema should have an Aliyat Neshama. So anybody have a hangover? Because, you know, how do the Goyim Gershon celebrate New Year's, and how do we celebrate New Year's, right? No. Right? No one has any hangovers, right? The Mika Amcha Yisrael, right? The way we celebrate New Year's compared to the Umat HaOlam. Right? Rav Levi Yitzchak Braditchev, Erev Yom Kippur, he went looking in the bars. And he couldn't find one Jew in the bar. And he said, Umi ka'amcha Yisrael. There's a mitzvah to eat and drink on Erev Yom Kippur, right? Whoever eats and drinks at Erev Yom Kippur, like he fasts 2 days. You imagine, he said, if the Goyim had a mitzvah to drink, Kelly's bar would be what? Standing room only, right? And he couldn't find one yid in a bar at Erev Yom Kippur, even though it's a mitzvah to drink. Umi ka'amcha Yisrael. Goy echad ba'aretz, right? Today's my father's yortzeit. Pesach Moshe ben Ephraim Zecher Tzalik Avracha. He went through the 7 levels of hell in the Shoah, and he survived. He had to survive because I had to be here today. So miracles that he survived, and I think 94% of Polish Jewry was annihilated. 92%, and my mother and he, both Polish Jews, survived. Miracles of miracles. Now, we all feel guilty, Batshev, I know I feel guilty that I didn't honor my parents I didn't honor them enough. Who doesn't feel guilty? But the beautiful part of Kibbut Av V'Eim, Yehuda, it doesn't stop with death. It keeps on going and going and going. So even though I didn't honor my parents enough in life, I can make up for it. The Riyah Kodesh says, if you check the 10 Commandments, when you have 2 parshas next door, Batshev, it has to be a strong connection. Why does the parsha of Kibbut Av V'Eim next door to Shabbat? If you check the 10 Commandments, next to Kibbut Av V'Eim is the parsha of Shabbat. Ma inyan shmita etzel har Sinai. Says the Ari, Shabbat is a symbol of life after death. Me'en olam haba yom Shabbat menucha. Shabbat symbol of olam haba. So the reason the Torah puts Kibbut Av V'Eim next to Shabbat, that even though your parents are no longer in this world, where are they? In the Shabbos world, the mitzvah continues what? Even after death. Shabbat, the symbol of Olam Haba. So Kibbut Av V'Eim even after death. So the question, how do you honor your parents after death? So when they're alive, you honor them, right? You call them, you visit them, you take them out for dinner, right? But how do you honor them after death? Exactly what I and Batsheva do, what Batsheva does every Shabbos, where she has 70, 80 women coming to her house and spreading Torah. She is honoring her parents after death. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm honoring my parents by giving a shir in their memory, Rivka bas Yitzchak and Elish bas Oshmachai, my son, and Rav Pesach Moshe ben Ephraim, and my mother-in-law Esther bas Sarah. So we are honoring them even after death. But the Chayadam says something amazing. You know what the Chayadam was? Moshe, he was the Mechutin of the Vilna Gaon. He says something amazing. There's a way you can honor your parents after death, even on a higher level than when they're alive. I'll put it in my language, okay? Chayadam, what he meant, I'll put in my language. He said, when they're alive, how do you honor them? You take them out to dinner. If you take them out for a Chinese meal, in 20 minutes they're hungry again. Right? You visit them, the hana is temporary. It doesn't last. But when you honor them after Me'eh Ve'esrim by giving a shir in their memory or saying Kaddish, the hana is not like a Chinese meal. The hana is forever. And the family bond is not broken with death. So my father's getting great pleasure from me now, more than any Chinese dinner, because the Hana, Moshe, is what? Eternal. It's not temporary.
Today is the Chai Adam's Yotzer.
Are you serious, Rabbi Abramson? I didn't know that. Rabbi Abramson. Today's the Chai Adam's Yotzeit. Kawinky Dinky? The Chai Adam, the great Chai, the one who I just quoted. It's Yona, Ein Shem Mikreh. It's my father's Yod, and I just quoted the Chai Adam. And he says you can honor parents after death even on a higher level, because the Hana doesn't wear off like a physical Hana. It's forever. Right? And Eno Helam Haba. The Mishnah says in the Sept tractate Idiot, that deals with testimony. Ha'av zoiche laben banoi bekoyach ba'osher b'chochma b'shanim. Parent gives to the child beauty, strength, rich. If the parent is rich, then the kid is rich, right? He gets Yerusha. The parent is beautiful, then chances are the kid is. B'chochma, right? If the parent is wise, then chances are the children inherit the genes. Ubeshanim, if you have good DNA, right? Ubemispa hadorot lefanav, says the Mishnah. The most important thing that parents give to their children is mispa hadorot lefanav. The number of generations before. What does that mean? Who cates? And that is the climax that parents give to their children. The most important thing of all, more important than beauty and koach and wisdom and money, because those things what? Don't last. Mispa hadorot lefanav. The link going back to Sinai. That's the most important thing that parents give us. The Mispa hadorot lefanav. The link up to Har Sinai. That's why kibbut of aim is even greater than honoring God. Say what? Talmud Yerushalmi, Masechta Peah, not me. The Rabbi says that honoring parents is greater than honoring God. How could that be? Because it says, by honoring God in Mishlei, Kabet es Hashem mahoinecha. Honor God from your wealth. If you have wealth, you have to buy expensive tefillin, a nice esrei galuliv. If you don't have, you're potter. But by kibbut of aim, it says, Kabet es avicha v'simecha. Even if you don't have, you have to go begging to make sure your parents are what? Comfortable. So the Rabbi says in Talmud Yerushalmi Peah that kibbut of aim is even greater than kavod Hashem, because the only way that we have kavod Hashem, what's our link to kavod Hashem is what? Mitzvah hadorot lefana, that's our link to Sinai. The Masorah is through our parents. And therefore Rashi says something amazing. Rashi says by the Shirat Hayam, the Jews said Elehei Avi, the God of my father. Why did the Jews say that by the Shirat Hayam? Says Rashi, because my Kiddusha, my link to God is given to me through my parents. They are the conduit, the channel, which the Chedek Elohim Yimal passes through. So just like the Neshama is eternal, so even after death, we have to continue to honor our parents, because death doesn't break the link, right? Our godly soul is routed through what? Our parents, especially through the mother. If your father is the Vilna Gaon, does that make you Jewish? No. It's the mama, the mama. Doesn't matter. The father could be a Puerto Rican. The mother, because the neshama is routed through the woman, because women are more godlike. Therefore, the word neshama, the word shechina, the word Torah, the word mitzvah, all feminine. Right? You ladies put us to shame. What? No. No, she's not. No. That's right. Right. Anyway, the Talmud says that bara kara de avua, a child is the knee of a deceased parent in Olam Haba. Why is that? Bara kara de avua, a child is the knee of a deceased parent in Olam Haba. Offspring are the knee of what? Of a deceased parent. Why the knee? Why dafke the knee? Because the knee is that limb that what? Bends or extends. Yechoyim lahagdilu lahaktin. So, the knee is the limb that extends to make one taller, or chas v'shalom bends to make one smaller. Right? So I hope my father and mother's knee is fully extended now in Olam Haba. I hope they're proud of me and elevating their neshama. The two best lawyers that the Jewish people ever had, besides Alan Dershowitz, is, tonight we'll see it, is Yona Hanavi and Yitzchak Avinu. Better than what? Alan Dershowitz, I think. Hope you won't mind. We're going to see Yona. What about Yitzchak Avinu? How is Yitzchak one of our best defense attorneys on Yom Kippur? There's a strange pasuk in Parshas Toldot. Vayeav Yitzchak es Esav ki tzayid bepiv. Yitzchak loved Esav because he gave him good geschmacka barbecue. Rabbi Abramson, that's what it says. Yitzchak Avinu, the Oila Temima, he loved Esav ki tzayid bepiv because he gave him good spare ribs. Where's the beef? Who said that? That's why Yitzchak Avinu, the Oila Temima, of the three patriarchs, who's the holiest? Yitzchak. Right? Because Abraham went to Chutz La'aretz. Yaakov went. Yitzchak wanted to go. God said, you can't go. You're not like your father, and you're not like your son. You cannot go to Chutz La'aretz. Because you're an Ola Temimah. So the holiest of the three Avos is what? Yitzchak Avinu. The Ola Temimah. So he loved Esau because he gave him a good roast beef sandwich. Let's get real, buddy. What does it mean? So to answer this question, of course, we're going to what? The Gemara on Shabbos Daf Pei Tes. Strange Gemara on Shabbos 89b. La'ased Lavo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the end of time, when God will settle up the accounts, God is going, with Tchias HaMesim, God will come to Avraham Avinu, Tchias HaMesim, and say, Bonecha Chatoli. Your children have sinned to me, Abraham. What do you say about that? Abraham, the Isha Chesed, Yona, Isha Chesed, Avraham Avinu. You know what he said? Yimachu al Kiddush Hashemecha. The Isha Chesed, Avraham Avinu, that's not what God wanted to hear, buddy. Let them be destroyed to sanctify your name. The Isha Chesed said that. That's not exactly Yehuda what God wanted to hear. Isha Chesed. Next, where does he go? He goes to Yaakov. Why doesn't he go to Yitzchak? Because Yitzchak is din. He don't want to hear that. Yitzchak is all about strict justice. So he skips Yitzchak. And he goes to Yaakov. God says, Yaakov, the Havelei Tsar Gidel Bonim. Yaakov had so much tzaris from his children. Efsher. God says, maybe the boy Rachme Aleim. Maybe Yaakov will beg mercy for Am Yisrael. So he went to Yaakov, and he said, Yaakov, your children have sinned. What do you say about that? You know what Yaakov says? Yimachu al Kiddush Hashemecha. Well, God, it's too bad. If they sin, let them be destroyed to sanctify your name. 0 for 2. That's not what God wanted to hear. Now he has no choice. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavayochu, he finally has to go to Yitzchak. Ein Breira. Remember, he didn't want to go to Yitzchak. Because Yitzchak is all about din, strict justice. But Ein Breira, so he goes to whom? Michael, the Yitzchak Avinu. Hashem didn't want to go to him because he's din, but no choice. So he says, God says to Yitzchak, Bonecha Chatoli. Your children have sinned. What do you say about that? Oma Yitzchak, Bonai, Veloy Bonecha? They're my children and they're not your children? What are you talking about, God? God said, bravo. Of all the patriarchs, it's not the Isha Chesed, it's not the Ishtam, it's Dafke Yitzchak Avinu who personifies what? Din, justice. No, Yitzchak is the opposite of Chesed. What you get is what you deserve, not a penny more. It's Dafke the Ish Din, the Pachad Yitzchak, who defends Klal Yisrael. He says, what do you mean God? Bonai v'loi banecha. Don't tell me they're my kids. They're your kids, God. And we're going to make it at the end of time, Batsheva, only for the, not the Ish HaChesed, not the Ish Tam, it's Dafke the Pachad Yitzchak. You hear? The first message that God gave about Am Yisrael to Paroi. Remember, the Jews were in Memtesh Sharei Tuma, Moshe. How low can you go? The first message to Paroi in Shemos 4, B'ni B'chori Yisrael. B'ni B'chori Yisrael. The Yidden are Memtesh Sharei Tuma, worshipping Avodah Zarah. What does God call them? B'ni, not just my children. B'chori Yisrael. A family, a father and mother can have 20 children. Yehuda, but there can only be one firstborn. There can only be one firstborn. Every Yid, said Rav Kook, God relates to every Yid as he would be the only one. B'ni b'chorvi Yisrael. They're memtesh sharei tuma. They're not just my son, they're my firstborn. And the firstborn is the most precious, because that's what makes a parent a parent. No matter how many kids you have, there can only be one firstborn. So Exodus 4, God says, B'ni b'chorvi Yisrael. Every Jew is a precious only child to God. Now we understand why Yitzchak loved Esav, Mr. Heinowitz. Not because of the roast beef, and not because of the barbecue. To tell Hashem, if I can love Esav despite his wicked ways, then you certainly can love Am Yisrael despite their wicked ways. That's the tzayid bepiv. It's not the roast beef. The tzayid bepiv, it's the ammo in his mouth to defend Klal Yisrael on Yom Kippur. It's Dafke Yitzchak, the din, who defends us. Irony of all ironies. Ki tzayid bepiv, if he could love Esav despite his wicked ways, Batsheva, then God certainly has to love us despite our evil ways, because we're not just a child. We're what? B'chori Yisrael. Each one is precious, an only child to him. So that's the first Perry Mason. Remember Perry Mason? Ta-da-da, ta-da. I'm dating myself. Who's the best, the second Perry Mason? Who? Yona. Yona Hanavi. Now, Yona Hanavi, you know who he was? One of the 48 Nevi'im in Tanakh. A Navi Hashem, super Haredi. The storm breaks out on the sea. It's about to sink the ship. He's on the ship with a bunch of sailors. Now, we know Sailor Sam. The sailors are not exactly very moral people, Yehuda, right? The sailors, what are they? Cutthroats and wife beaters. Who are sailors? Remember the movie Frank Sinatra? Sailors on the Town. I mean, what are sailors? A storm breaks out. The ship's about to sink. He's a super Haredi. He says, Ki yodeya ani, ki b'sheli hasar hagodol hazeh. You hear what he says? I know it's my fault that this storm is about to sink the ship. It's my fault. He's a super Haredi rabbi. He's on a ship with a bunch of lowlifes. Why does he say, Rabbi Yaakov, Ki b'sheli hasar hagodol hazeh? Maybe it's the fault of one of the cutthroats, one of the wife beaters. Why do you say Ki b'sheli? He says, Rav Aaron Kotler, Zecher Tzadik Yivracha. Lo yaleinu, when a tragedy strikes, lo yaleinu, lo yaleinu, the frum Jew cannot point to merits. The frum Jew has to look at the guy in the mirror. They don't know any better. Ki b'sheli hasar godel zeh, Rav Aaron Kotler Zatzal. Lo yaleinu, when a catastrophe strikes, the frum Jew has to look in the mirror and not blame the chalonim. It's not their fault. God doesn't expect much from them. They're tinik shenishba. It's all up to us. We are the ones. Ki b'sheli hasar hagodel hazeh. Now, let's take a look, before we get to Yona, and analyze the book, the word machzor. Why do we call the prayer book machzor? Machzor comes from the word cycle, from the word lachzor. The machzor should help us what? Return. You read the machzor, hopefully you'll lachzor, you'll do tshuva, you'll come to Hashem. Yeshayahu 55 tells us that these 10 days are so precious. Dirshu Hashem b'hi motzoi, karahu b'yoto korov. Seek Hashem when he can be found. Call him when he's near. When is that? Now, the rest of the year, the king is in the palace. It's hard to get an appointment. Right, Yona? Hard to get an appointment. But now the king leaves his palace. Now, Yehuda, it's God in search of man. These 10 days, it's God in search of man, reaching out to us. Let's reconnect. You don't need any appointments like you do the rest of the year. Which reminds me, Erev Yom Kippur is around the corner. Irving calls up his rabbi. Irving is a Fabrenta Yankee fan, a baseball fan. Fabrenta. How do you say that in English? Fabrenta. Rabid. He says, Rebbe, I know tonight is Kol Nidre, but it's also the final game of the World Series. And I never missed the final Yankee game against the Dodgers. I'm dating myself. The Yankees against the Dodgers. I'm a rabid fan. I've got to watch the World Series. It's Pekuach Nefesh. But I know it's Kol Nidre. Rabbi, what should I do? The rabbi says, Irving, calm down. That's why we have VCRs. I'm dating myself. That's why God invented VCRs. Irving is surprised. He says, Rabbi, you mean I can tape Kol Nidre? Don't you get it? Right before Yom Kippur, Mrs. Levy from Miami Beach, she hears this great guru in India, and she has to go see him right before Yom Kippur. Otherwise, she can't have Yom Kippur. So she takes a plane from Miami Beach to India. She flies to the guru's house, in a beautiful mansion there, and she won't see the guru. The guard said, lady, you crazy? There's a 9-month waiting period to see the guru. You just can't come in. She said, I must see the guru before Yom Kippur. Lady, come back in 9 months. We'll put you on the list, the Rishima. No, I can't. She breaks away from the guards. She bursts into the mansion. The guru is sitting there. She says, Izzy, you have to come home. No one says Kol Nidre like you. Don't you get it, Izzy? Kol Nidre. It's not a joke. Right? Not a joke, unfortunately, right? It's not a joke. Anyway. There's a lot of gemachim out there. Dr. Abrams says a lot of gemachim, right? A gemach for this, a gemach for that. I want to give you a gemach that doesn't cost any money. A gemach for smiles. Doesn't cost any money. It's free. The Gemara in Tainus, page 22 says, Ora, you can look it up, every Jew at 22, that a comedian, a guy who smiles and makes a Jew who's sad laugh, ben olam haba. Now every Jew has a chelik in olam haba, the Marsha says, but who's a ben olam haba? Comedians, people that see Yidden are sad and have no smile, and they put a smile on their face, they're a ben olam haba. The question is why? Why are comedians a ben olam haba? Why is smiling so important? You give someone a smile, someone's having, Connie, a bad hair day. Some people have a bad hair day, right? And you smile at him, or you say a kind word, you don't know what it can do. It can change the person's life. A smile at the right time, a joke at the right time, you give the person his ruach back. Wie sagt man in Yiddish, lebt auf. How do you say that in English? Gershom, lebt auf. I don't know how they say that.
Lights up.
He lights up. You light up my life. I won't give up my day job. It's a great song. It's about God. It's about God. That's right. Now, Rabbi Kiva tells us, "V'haftar yacha kamocha zeh klal godel b'Torah." You shall mean the Dorim that the greatest principle of the Torah is to love a fellow Jew, do kindness to a fellow Jew. That's the greatest principle in the Torah. V'haftar yacha kamocha. Why? Rav Soloveitchik says something incredible. How you have to analyze a Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva Perik Aleph says, if you do a sin, bein adam lamakayim, you sin against God, so you have to say vidui, ana Hashem, chatosi lefanecha. God, I have sinned. What does that mean, Moshe lefanecha? In front of you. God is not affected by our sin. We can't affect him. So you sin, bein adam lamakayim, the Rambam says, you say, ana Hashem, chatosi lefanecha. I have sinned before you. But it doesn't touch God. It affects us. Says the Holy Rambam, if you look at Hilchos Tshuva Perik Bet, hachote lechaveiro. When you sin against God, you say, chatasi lefanecha. God is not affected. You don't put on tefillin. You don't keep kosher. You're only hurting yourself. He's not affected. But the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva Perik Bet, hachote lechaveiro. Listen to the Rambam. You have to analyze a Rambam. Hachote lechaveiro. You sin against a fellow yidul. Umeis chaveiro. Bacheva, and the yidul dies. Maybe asara. You take 10 people al kivro. You take 10 people to his grave. V'yoyma, and you say, chatasi lashem ulaploini. I have sinned, not in front of God. I have sinned. Lashem ulaploini. Because every time you sin against a fellow yidul, it's what? It's a twofer. It's a twofer. You sin against the yidul and his Father in heaven. So Rav Soloveitchik points out, chatasi lashem, not lefanecha. When you hurt a fellow Jew, kavayachol, you're affecting God. Because there's a pasuk in Tehillim 91, Moshe, imo yonoichi betzara. Imo yonoichi betzara. I am with him in all of his suffering. So you don't put on tefillin, bein adam lamakayim. Doesn't affect God. It affects you. You damage yourself, chas v'sholem. But when you hurt another Jew, the Rambam says you say chatasi lashem ulaploini. Then kavayachol, you're also affecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because God feels each of our pain. Imo enoichi betzara. So when you're kind to a fellow yidul, you're kind to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Reb Yaakov, every ben adam lechaveiro is a twofer. Pretty amazing. Now we know Rabbi Kiva said, "V'haftar yacha kamocha, zeh klal godel b'Torah." So the most important is ben adam lechaveiro. You could be a big tzaddik, ben adam lamakayim. But if you don't have ben adam lechaveiro, imo yanoichi b'tzara, if you hurt a fellow yidul, oy, who are you also hurting? God. He says so in Tehillim 91. And therefore, this explains a very strange Gemara. In Ksubos, page 62, there was a great sage, his name was Rav Rechumi. Rav Rechumi. He would learn all year, a koilel guy, and he would come home to his wife only Erev Yom Kippur. So engrossed in his learning. One Erev Yom Kippur, he was so engrossed in his learning that what? He forgot to come home. And his wife is waiting and waiting. When is he coming? When is he coming? When is he coming? I haven't seen him all year. She waited and waited, and she saw he wasn't coming. She began to cry. And this great rabbi, at that moment, for some strange reason, was sitting in an attic. The attic collapsed and killed him. Why? Now, why was he in an attic on Erev Yom Kippur instead of being home with his wife? His name was Rav Rechumi. What's the word Rechumi? Rachamim. Who did he have Rachmanis on? Himself. What about his better half? What about his better half? He heard her. So God said, I'm taking you out. Who needs your learning? I'm taking you out. Sitting in an attic, Erev Yom Kippur? He ignored the greatest Benodam Lechavero, his best friend, his wife. And for that, Yom Kippur does not atone. God felt her pain. And therefore, God took him out. Even though we're studying Torah the whole time. I wouldn't repeat this story unless I heard it from Rabbi Wein himself, so I can repeat it. Rabbi Wein's father-in-law was a Talmud in Radun. And he told us, you won't find this in the art scroll books. You won't find it. But Rabbi Wein's father-in-law saw it. There was a Talmud there. A few days before Rosh Hashanah, the Chofetz Chaim gets up and Radun makes a speech. He says, listen, there's a shtetl outside of Radun. The Yidden Debech Amaratzim, they don't know. The mikveh is broken. I want some boys to volunteer to leave the yeshiva Radun and go spend Rosh Hashanah with those Debech Amaratzim and tell them the importance of fixing the mikveh. So he makes the speech and he sits down. And the boys go back to learning. Okay. An hour later, two boys come over. Chofetz Chaim was the mashgiach. And they said, Rebbe, can you tell me this Toisus? Verstehe ich the Toisus? So, Chofetz Chaim explains the Toisus to them. Then he says to them, no. Rebbe, what do you mean, no? No, you heard what I said. Maybe you and your chavrusa will what? Leave Radin and go to the shtetl with these Amaratzim and daven with them and tell them the importance of fixing the mikveh. They said, Rebbe, we should leave Radin, the yeshiva, on Rosh Hashanah and go daven with Amaratzim. So Rav Wein's father-in-law was there, otherwise I wouldn't have said it. The Chofetz Chaim had a look of disgust on his face, and he said, Feh, wer darf dein Tosfos? You won't find it in the art scroll book. Chofetz Chaim should become angry. Feh, he said, who needs your Tosfos? You think about yourself? There's Yidden there that don't know the importance of a mikvah. What are you doing here studying Tosfos? Go there and teach them. Reach out to another Yid, another Mechaver, and tell them what it means to fix the mikvah. They don't know. Who needs your Tosfos? Surely you won't find that in the art scroll book. I think they censored that part out. But anyway. What? Okay, let's get to Yona. Yona's flight, our great escape, or Yona's flight of fancy. Who was Yona? Yona, remember, Eliyahu Hanavi resurrected a child. That was Yona. Elisha resurrected a child. That's Chavakuk. Because Elisha told the Shanamit, in 1 year's time, At Choveket Ben. So the child Elisha resurrected is the prophet Chavakuk. But the dead child Eliyahu resurrected, Yona ben Amitai. And he became a Talmud of Eliyahu Hanavi. Where is he running to? Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Or you can run, Yehuda, but you can't hide. This Navi Hashem thought that he can escape from God. Who's he kidding, Bathsheba? Now let's analyze the book of Yona. First we'll do Pshat, because Pshat is meat and potatoes. And I know, Bathsheba, you like dessert. The Rambam says Kabbalah's dessert. So first we'll do the Pshat, the meat and I like meat and potatoes. And then, hopefully there'll be time to do the dessert, the Kabbalah of what is it really Yona was running from and who is Yona. So according to Pshat, Yona teaches it's never too late for tshuva, even a goy. Even a goy can do tshuva. Ninveh, if a goy can do tshuva, certainly what? The B'nai B'chor Yisrael, it gives a yid, Mr. Heine, what's chizuk. No matter how far I'm verkrochen, if God can forgive the Ninvenites, he can certainly forgive B'nai B'chor Yisrael. The Radak says that. It gives a yid chizuk to do tshuva. Now, the Zohar says, now, how come they didn't put him in the loony bin? He said, Od Arboim Yoim, Ninveh will become Hiroshima. Why didn't they put him in the loony bin? So the Zohar says that the king of Ninveh was a Gilgal of Paroi, Pharaoh. So he knew that the Navi Hashem doesn't lie. He tangled centuries early when he was Pharaoh with Moshe Rabbeinu. So the king of Nineveh was a Gilgal of Paroi, therefore he knew Hashem meant business, and therefore he did tshuva. The low-life goy can do tshuva, Kani, certainly B'ni B'chori Yisrael. Wow, who loves you, baby? So that's a simple explanation, of course. But Yona, who does he think he's escaping from? Right? Who was he running from? He was the dead child that Eliyahu Navi resurrected, the great Navi Hashem. And why did he escape? Why did he escape? Because he knew that the Yidden, he's screaming his lungs out, surely, do tshuva in one ear, out the other. He knew that the Ninevites would listen. Unlike the Yidden, it doesn't. It'll be a kitruk on Klal Yisrael. I don't want to be a kitruk on Klal Yisrael. Because they will listen, and the Yidden don't. How would it reflect? So I'm going to escape. And he also knew that 130 years later, Moshe, they will exile the 10 tribes. Yona felt responsible for Israel's safety, so he ran to protect and defend Israel. Let them sink in their evil. I have to rehabilitate them. Connie, 130 years later, they're going to exile the Aseres HaShvatim. Let them drop dead now. So he protected the covet of the Ben. The Talmud says his Rabbi Eliyahu was concerned with the covet of Av. Yona was concerned with the covet of the Ben. Who's the Ben? Us. So he ran to protect and defend Klal Yisrael. He knew Nevuah was only in Eretz Yisrael, not in Chutz La'aretz, so he ran to Chutz La'aretz. If you analyze the text, Pashev, you see that Yona escapes in 3 ways. The Talmud says, number 1, he disguised himself. Took off his shtreimel and took off his kapota. Reminds me of a story. It's right before Yom Kippur. Yankel and Meir Shorim, Yankel the Chus and Meir Shorim, hears that there's a place called Las Vegas where you can make a lot of money. And he's in deep debt. Right? So he figures he'll take a chance, he'll go to Las Vegas, and maybe he'll win some money because to get out of debt. But his friend says, Yankel, you can't go to Las Vegas in a shtreimel and bort and payas. You have to take off your shtreimel, cut off your bort and payas, take off your kapota, and also you have to buy Bermuda shorts and a Hawaiian shirt if you're going to Las Vegas. Otherwise you won't fit in. So Nebuch Yankel shaves off his bort and payas, takes off his shtreimel. It's right before Yom Kippur. He figures Yom Kippur will forgive him anyway. And he's in deep debt, and he buys a ticket to Las Vegas. And he's disguised, Bermuda shorts, Hawaiian shorts, no shtreimel, no bort and payas. And he's in the airport, and he gets his bags, and he's running to catch a taxi to get to the casino. And he falls, and he trips, and he falls down 3 flights of stairs. And he breaks both legs. And he's laying there in the terminal. And he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what did you do to me? I didn't even leave the terminal. God says, Yankel, is that you? I didn't recognize you. No board, no payas. A Bermuda shorts with Hawaiian shirt. Yankel, is that you? So that's what Yona did. The Talmud says, I'm not making this up. Yona took off his Haredi clothes. He put on Bermuda shorts and Hawaiian shirts, and he went on the love boat, right? So his first escape was what? To disguise himself. A physical escape. You know, 1 million Israeli travelers leave Israel. They try to escape. I think they get cabin fever. Baruch Hashem, they come back, right? Escape the Chutz La'aretz, the wandering Jew. That's the first escape. He physically disguised himself like our Yankala in Mea Sha'arim, figuring God won't recognize him. Number 2, on the ship, he goes to sleep. Isn't that a form of escapism? To go to sleep? People are depressed, they sleep a lot. Yona's in denial. He attempts to escape from reality. And then the ultimate escape, Reb Shmuel, is what? Is suicide. He attempts suicide. He escapes through suicide. He said, throw me overboard. Other ships were not affected. Remember? Talmud says the other ships were not affected. Throw me overboard. And then the sailors didn't want to kill him. They all began to pray to their Getchkes. Right? They all prayed to their Getchkes. Yona ben Amittai, he knows the Emet. Does he pray? No, he's sleeping. They're all praying to their Getchkes. Yona ben Amittai, irony of ironies, Jonah, he doesn't daven, he goes to sleep. The captain says to him, Malacha Mirdam. Who's the captain? The captain, oh captain, my captain. Who said that? Robin Williams, I think. Oh, yeah, in the... Oh, captain, my captain. Who's the captain of the universe? Malacha Mirdam, we're all fashlufen. How do you say in Yiddish? Fatschadit. How do you say? Confused. We're all like fatschadit. Malacha Mirdam, kum, get up and daven to Hashem. But he doesn't daven. He's so depressed, he wants to die. Throw me into the sea. Now, suicide is usher. A Navi Hashem wants to commit suicide, that's murder. But Moshe, how could he do it? Kill me. Suicide is murder. It's the greatest form of escapism, self-destruction. But he had a good teacher. Moshe Rabbeinu said to God, if you don't forgive the Yidden, mecheni no mesifrecha, wipe me out, not just in this world, but in Olam Haba. Look how much Nevi'im love God more than their own lives. The Ava Nevi'im said, if you don't forgive the Yidden, mecheni no mesifrecha, erase me from your book of life. So if Moshe was willing to commit suicide to save the Jewish people, then Yona Hanavi had a good Rebbe, Yona. Then he could say, kill me, if that's what it takes. Kill me, rather than condemn my beloved people. That's how much the Nevi'im loved the people more than themselves. So he refused to daven. Because if he davens, he has to go to Nineveh, they become rehabilitated, it reflects negatively on Klal Yisrael, because they don't want to hear him. And the Ninevites will hear. He knew they will. He's a Navi. I'm going to condemn my people. I'd rather be dead, like my Rebbe Moses, rather than condemn my people. That's a Navi Hashem. But es hat ihm gut nicht geholfen, right? He's willing to sacrifice his own life to save Israel. Nineveh does tshuva, the Jews don't. Yona would be condemning Israel if he went to Nineveh. All of us are Yona. All of us are racked with self-doubt, trying to run away from our responsibilities and tasks. Right? The flight of the Yona. Where do I fit in? In Shir Hashirim, Kodesh Baruch Hu calls us what? Yonati. My lovebird. Yonati. God says, my Yona is always loyal to me, my beloved people, even though they stray. Even though they stray. It's amazing. Zacharti lo chesed norayich ahavas kilosoyach lech teich achrei b'midbar eretz le'zerua. What does God say to the prophet Yirmiyahu? I remember when the Yidden were my young Kala. I remember God says, Zacharti lo chesed norayich, the chesed kaviochel that we did for him when we ran after him in the midbar, when you were my young Kala. You didn't ask me where you're taking me. There's no Motel 6 in the midbar. We said, sweetheart, I'll follow you anywhere. God saw that chesed you did when you were my Kala. I'll never forget that. So the question is, what about the Chet Egel? What about the Meraglim? What about the Korach mutiny? What about the wild Moabite women? God doesn't remember that. All he remembers is the lovey-dovey. What about all the averot that we gave him? All the headaches we gave him? After the 40th year in the Midbar, we went with the wild Moabite women. Can you imagine that, Bathsheba? 40 years after the Exodus? And all God remembers is the Chesed Norayich, when you were my young Kala. So Rav Soloveitchik explains, of course in every marriage there's going to be ups and downs. But when you love somebody, you accent the positive and you don't focus on the negative. So even though there's lovers quarrel, all lovers quarrel. But if you love each other, what do you focus on? The Chesed Norayich. And that's what God says. You're my lovebird, no matter what. Right? So all of us try to escape like Yona, but we have to know there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide from our obligations in life. So we read the book of Yona on Yom Kippur. It gives us chizuk on Yom Kippur. We also can return and be mitakein, just like whom? Yona. It's never too late. Never give up. All of us have a unique destiny that only we can fulfill. Now, there are many Nevi'im, Reb Shmuel. Yona didn't want the job. God could have put an ad in the Jewish press. Navi wanted to go to Nineveh. I'm sure there'll be applicants. Don't you think, Moshe? All trips, expenses paid. It's failed Nevi'im. The Gemara in Megillah says there were millions of Nevi'im. Millions. Why does God want Yona so much? Because every person is unique. Just like his fingerprints are unique, his tafkid is unique. God doesn't run out of fingerprints, Bathsheba. He doesn't run out of tafkidim. So Yona was the only one to do that mission. The Sfas Emes says, we say in the Mishnah, in Avos, Im ein anili mili. If I won't do it, who else will do it? Nobody. My tafkid, only I can do. Moshe Rabbeinu cannot do my tafkid. Does Moshe Rabbeinu have my fingerprints? Does he? Bathsheba. So, every person's fingerprints are unique. Says the Sfas Emes, every person's, I'm saying that, but he's saying that every person's tafkid is unique. And what I can do, the Vilna Gaon can't do. Who am I to the Vilna Gaon? So therefore, God couldn't let go of Yona. That's your mission. That's your tikkun. No other Navi will do. No one can do it my way. Da-da-da-da. I'm dating myself. Da-da-da-da. My way. So you can't escape from who you are meant to be. It says Yona went down to the bottom of the ship. Reb Shmuel, why is it important? He had a first-class cabin, a third-class cabin. The Navi is not a history book. We have to know his cabin was at the bottom of the ship. Maybe he bought a suite on top. Yerida l'tzorach aliyah. Sometimes you have to hit bottom before you can what? Rise again. So the Navi says Yona went down to the bottom of the ship. Yona yorad, it says. But it was Yerida l'tzorach aliyah. And no other Navi will do. All of us, like Yona, must search ourselves on Yom Kippur to find out who we really are and if we're living up to what? Our specific mission in life, our tafkid. As Yona ultimately was forced to do. Hashem is always sending us messages. Hurricane Yona. Right? The pogroms in Europe and Paris. What do people say? There's none so blind as he refuses to see. People are sleeping through the raging storm. Bathsheba, there was a storm raging. Yona was sleeping. Who is Yona? That's the Jews of Europe. They're sleeping through a raging storm. There was a pogrom in Paris and in Belgium, in Holland. I'm good friends with the chief rabbi of Holland. His home was firebombed 4 times. The chief rabbi of Holland in the last 3 years. The Yidden of Europe, like Yona, buddy, are sleeping through a raging storm. There are none so blind as he who refuses to see. Get it? See in the sea. Wake up and come home. Right. What do they think is a passing phase in Europe? They love them in Belgium? And Obama, the abomination, loves them? Why don't we heed the warning? I like that music. It keeps me awake. So the Jews of Europe are asleep like Yona through the raging storm. But hope they get the message, Mekimia, and come on home. The Jews of Paris are making aliyah. Anti-Semitism is God's game plan to get the Yidden to come home. Because the Vilna Gaon says, Mashiach cannot come until what? The Yidden come first. The Vilna Gaon said that before Herzl. Mashiach cannot come until the Yidden come home. Vilna Gaon, 1797. So anti-Semitism is God's game plan, don't you see, to get the Yidden to come home. But some Yidden are sleeping through the storm. What? Hopefully they'll wake up. Okay, now let's get to the dessert, because I'm running out of time. Let's get to the dessert. Do you mind giving out the papers, please, Rabbi Yaakov? What is Yona really about, al-pi Kabbalah? I made copies, otherwise you might think I'm hallucinating. I'm fasting, but I'm not hallucinating. So please give half here and half there. It'll go faster. Please just take one, and pass it down, please. What is the book of Yona really about? Al-pi Kabbalah. I'm over 40 years old, so I could study Kabbalah. Rabbi Yaakov, can you take one and pass it down, please? Okay. Please just take one and pass it down because I'm running out of time and the 2-minute warning. Now, you got to look inside, otherwise you think I'm what, Gershom? Just one copy. Just give it and just pass it down. Thank you. No, I don't have any more. But anyway, you look in with a neighbor, please. Please just look in with a neighbor. Toda Rabba. What's strange is that this is the Mishnah Brura. Who wrote the Shara Tzion? Rabbi Abramson. Who wrote the Shara Tzion? Mishnah Brura. In Halacha Sefer, the Mishnah Brura speaks about Gilgal. It's just unbelievable. In Halacha Sefer, the Mishnah Brura in Shara Tzion writes about Gilgal. What's it doing in Halacha Sefer? Fasten your seatbelt, Pashev. You see it says Shara Tzion. There's a yellow line there. The Shara Tzion is the Mishnah Brura parish on the Mishnah Brura. And he says, what's the Kabbalistic secret behind Yona? Who is Yona? Take a look, Batsheva. See, it says the Kavanatam. I think I underlined it. The Kavanatam. The Kavana, why we read the book of Yona when? Ki Adam choshev kama pa'amim liyayish es atzmoi. A person can fall into despair. She'en yochal litakein b'shim ofen. He becomes a fatalist. Val kein yisnayek tomid ba'ofen echad. He becomes a fatalist, Satan's trap. I'm no good, no how, whatever I do doesn't matter. I might as well stay in the pool room. Vim yigzar olav HaKadosh Baruch Hu lamut yomut. A fatalist, if he has to die, he'll die. He'll accept his punishment. Avol to'ashu. This is the Mishnah Brura writing in Halacha Sefer. It's a terrible mistake. Shesov dover yeh, Moshe. Sov dover yeh. Kol ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu rotze minafsho sheyitakein muchrach letakein. You can pay me now. V'yovoi oit pam upamayim. This is the Mishnah Brura writing in Halacha Sefer. Very strange. He mixes Kabbalah with Halacha. V'yovoi oit pam upamayim lo'olam hazeh. And the person, if he doesn't do his tikkun, has to come back again and again to this world. Ubal korcha yuchrach letakein. What does bal korcha mean, Yona? Yuchrach letakein. If you don't pay me now, you'll pay me later. Therefore, va'amech kulam tzadikim. Isaiah 60. I don't know about you. I'm no tzaddik. So the Ruach Kodesh says, "V'amich kulam tzadikim." God tells Isaiah, after all the Gilgulim, "V'amich kulam tzadikim," we're all going to make it. God cannot afford to give up on any Jewish person. This week's Pasha, Ki Chelek Hashem Amo. Devarim 32, Ki Chelek Hashem Amo. What does that mean? God is a portion of his people. Everyone is a Chelek Hashem. We're all part of God. And the Balatanya says, Chelek Elahai Mimal Mamash. God can't afford to give up on no Jew. We're too big to fail. Unlike Lehman Brothers, Rab Shmuel, we're too big to fail. God can allow us to fail. He's heavily invested in us, a part of himself. So, muchmach letakein, v'amech kulam tzadikim. Isaiah 60. Vim kain, if it's so, lama lo kala amal. Listen, why do you need all of the, how do you say amal b'yivrit? All the toil, lamut. Why do you have to keep dying? V'lizbol chibut hakever. What does that mean? To suffer chibut hakever, tribulations of the grave, but the neshama has to see its body what? Rotting in the grave. It's terrible anguish for the neshama to see its body decomposing. What do you have to keep dying for? V'lizbol chibut hakever, the tribulations of the grave, ushar tzorot, v'lachzer ot pam. Why do you want, what business is God in? The recycling business. Don't you get it? But what do you need the chibut hakever? What do you have to keep dying for? Do it right. Uraya me Yona. Who is Yona? Who is Yona? Me and you and me. We're all Yona. Every one of us is Yona. Yona, says the Zohar, is the godly soul that comes down here and tries to run away from its mission. And God said, Fetegunish helfen. How do you say that in English, Beryl? Fetegunish helfen. Uraya meyona. Shakurish Baruch Hu rotza me'ito she'elach v'yinabe. God said, Yona, you're my man. You have to come and go to Nineveh. I know you have frimme cheshbonos. Charlie, we have frimme cheshbonos. He meant well. Defending Klal Yisrael, protecting their covet. All fine and good. But God says, I'm the boss. I know that too. But you have to go. That's your tikkun. V'hu me'en. What does me'en mean? He refused. B'zeh. V'nos layam. And he ran to the sea. By the sea, by the sea. Mokom shvayishal avot shchina. Because for some reason God doesn't rest the shchina where? In the sea. Nabois. V'roinu shenid babayam. And he got swallowed up in the ocean. V'nivla badag. And he got swallowed up by Moby Dick. Remember Moby Dick? Voyasham b'meyav kama yamim. And remained many days in the belly of Moby Dick. L'fi hanireh. B'vaday lo yuchal etzkayim divrei Hashem yisbarach. Ask anybody. It looks like Yona is never going to go to Nineveh. He's going to be in the belly of the beast. He's never going to Nineveh. Forget about it. Looks like Yona won, right? Forget about it. Who said that? Forget about it. Gershom, who said that? Forget about it. Umekal mokaim. You're looking in, I hope, Gershom. Umekal mokaim re'inu shesoif dovra haya sheretzayin Hashem yizbarach niskayim v'yelech v'yenabe. In the end, Satan Gudish geholfen, God won out. Against his own will, he had to go to Nineveh, prophesize, rehabilitate them, because for some reason that was his tikkun in life. Cain hu Adam, who's Yona? Every mensch says the Chofetz Chaim, incredible. The Mishnah Brura is talking, not the Ruach Kodesh. You would think the Ruach Kodesh is saying this. Michael, it's the Mishnah Brura, the cold halacha man, putting this on the page of the Mishnah Brura. Cain hu Adam bin Yona, of every human being in his own world, his own little world. He's Yona. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Or you can run, Yehuda, but you can't hide. Now, Rabbi Abraham said, you ask a Talmud Chacham, he'll tell you that I heard Rabbi Miller say, Rabbi Victor Miller, that Shas nowhere speaks about Gilgal. I heard Rabbi Victor Miller, the great tzaddik, they asked him about Gilgal, and he says, I can't tell you nothing about Gilgal because Shas doesn't mention nothing about Gilgal. I heard Rabbi Miller say it himself. But the Mishnah Berurah disagrees with Rabbi Victor Miller Zatzal. The Mishnah Berurah says over here, there's a Mishnah, Masechta Avot Perik Dalit, that speaks about Gilgal. V'zeh shamru ba'avot. The Mishnah Berurah is quoting Avot, Mishnah. What are you telling me the Mishnah doesn't speak about Gilgal? V'al yiftachacha yitzrecha. Let your Yetzirah not promise you shahashoyel beis monos lach, that the grave will be a refuge for you. Satan says, eat, wine, women, and song, because once they put you in the grave, it's over. It can't do nothing to you. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that the Mishnah means, let the Yetzirah not guarantee you shahashoyel beis monos lach, because the grave is not the end of the story, Rabbi Yaakov. Shal kochacha atanoitzar. Against your will, you're recreated. Val kochacho atonoilad. And against your will, you're what? Reborn. Who said that? Born again. Jimmy Carter. He's quoting a Mishnah. The Mishnah Berurah says this Mishnah in Avos Dalit is speaking about Gilgal. Al kochacho atonoilad. Because even after you're dead, you don't do your tikkun. Against your will, you're reborn. Val kochacho atachai. You are reborn again against your will. The Chofetz Chaim, the Shar Tzion, quotes this Mishnah to prove the doctrine of Gilgal. So how could Ramila Zatzal say that Shas doesn't speak about Gilgal? It's an open Mishnah according to the Holy Chofetz Chaim, the Shar Tzion. Now Yona went into the belly of Moby Dick. That represents the grave, the belly of the belly of a whale. It's dark, it's dank, it's cold. It represents what? The grave. And he's born again. And he comes out of the grave, the belly of the beast, Rabbi Yaakov, and he's forced to do his tikkun. That's us, says the Mishnah Berurah. If we don't do a tikkun now, then it's recycling time. And that's very painful for the neshama, to be born again and to die again and to suffer chibut hakever. So it says the Holy Mishnah Berurah, Shar Tzion, save yourself the trouble. Do your tikkun now. Batsheva, I hope you and I are doing our tikkun. Wow. With bells on, I hope. I know you are. Right? So we won't have to be recycled. It's very painful for the neshama. It's amazing that on Yom Kippur, Yom HaKippurim, says the Zohar, Yom HaKippurim, Yom Kippur is a day like Purim. Isn't that mind-boggling? What in the world does Yom Kippur have to do with what? Purim. Aren't they totally opposites? What could the Zohar mean? Says the Holy Ari. What happened on Purim? Esther removed her mask and revealed her true identity. What happens, Yehuda, on Yom Kippur? We remove our mask. What's our mask? We have an out-of-body experience on Yom Kippur. Gershom, we make believe that we're dead. We don't eat, we don't drink, we don't have marital relations, we don't bathe, we're dressed in white, we daven all day. That's what the neshamas do. One day a year, what do you say? I'm a soul man. Don't confuse me with my bodysuit. And Batsheva, this parsha we read, the Vurim Lamed Bet, Atzur Tamim Pa'oloi. God calls himself a rock. 9 times in this week's parsha, God keeps saying, I am the rock. I am the rock. The rock is a symbol of permanence. Lean on me. 9 times God says, I'm the rock. Do you know why you go to a cemetery, you put a rock on the grave? Why do you put a rock on the grave? That's a great nechama. My relative is not 6 feet under. That's his bodysuit. Where is he? He's with the rock. He's with the rock. Don't confuse me with my bodysuit. That's why you put a rock on a grave. It's a great nechama. One day a year, I take off my mask. Esther took off her mask. Peekaboo. Yom Kippur, Ora, we take off our mask. What's our mask? I have an out-of-body experience. I have a taste of eternity. Eating, drinking, all the other stuff. That's the bodysuit is interesting. The neshama couldn't care less about macaroni and cheese and taking a bath and spritzing yourself. So Yom Kippurim, says the Holy Ari, Esther took off her mask, revealed the true identity. On Yom Kippur, we reveal our true identity, that I'm a soul man. That's who I am. And therefore, on Yom Kippur, we light a candle for the living and the dead. Don't we? Because what are we doing on Yom Kippur? We're merging. I'm not my bodysuit. I'm a godly, eternal soul. The Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, a pasuk in Mishlei. Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. So we unite. That's what we say, Yisker on Yom Kippur. We unite with our beloved. We say, Yeshiva Shalmala, by the Chol Nidre. Who's Yeshiva Shalmala? That's the souls, Yeshiva Shalmala. They join us. So to make them feel at ease, we act like we're dead. We're dressed in white, no eating, no drinking, we daven all day. We act like we're already in Olam Haba. One day a year, we reconnect with who I really am. We join our beloved departed. We make them feel at ease. So a kittel, forget about the body. On Yom Kippur, we're all connected to the source, God, the eternal soul. The Chelik Elahai Mimao. Wow. Yom Kippur, Batsheva, we have an out-of-body experience. Isn't that amazing? Yom Kippurim, a day of atonements. Is that proper Hebrew? It should say Yom Kippur. That's Yiddish. The Torah doesn't say Yom Kippur. Yom Kippurim. Why in the plural? So one is for the Chayim and for the Mesim. How come the Mesim need kapara? It ain't over till it's over. Even a person is dead, right? But he set forces in motion that continue to live beyond the grave. What kind of role model was he for his family, his friends? Where did he invest his money? In the shtuyot or in the Asper Yeshiva? So, or in other good causes, right? So, the action that we do lives beyond us, positive or negative. So, Yom Kippurim, B'Loshen Rabim, L'chaim and Gam L'Meitim. What kind of example were we? Yom Kippur is R&R for the soul. What does R&R mean? No, rest and recreation for the soul. The Zohar says something amazing. Yom Kippurim, a day of atonements. For what? Us and him. Should I bite my tongue? The Zohar is not me. There's a pasuk in the Torah, in Shmos Lamed. The Torah says, "V'chipe Aaron al karnotav achat bashana midam chatas hakipurim." Once a year, Aaron shall make kapara on the Mizbach HaZahav. What does Mizbeach need a kapara for? The Mizbeach sins. Why does Aaron have to smear the blood of the Chatas HaKapurim on the Mizbach HaZahav? Why? Who does the Mizbeach represent? The Mizbeach needs kapara. Look how much God loves us. The Hasidim went to the Baal Shem Tov. They said, Baal Shem Tov, it's Erev Yom Kippur today. Tell us how to prepare for Yom Kippur. Baal Shem Tov says, you don't need me. Go to Muttel the tailor. Muttel the tailor will tell you how to prepare for Yom Kippur. Muttel the tailor, he barely knows how to read the Ivra. They're the greatest rabbis of the generation. Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe Haistach Mengain, right? They go to Muttel the tailor, knock on his door, he sees the greatest rabbis, the Balatanya, all the great Hasidim. Baal Shem Tov sent us to you, Muttel the tailor. You'll tell us how to prepare for Yom Kippur. He says, I'm just a poor tailor. Remember? I'm just a poor tailor, Muttel. You are the greatest rabbis. Muttel, you're holding out on us. The Baal Shem Tov said, you'll tell us how to prepare for Yom Kippur. Don't hold out on us, Muttel. I'm a poor tailor. We don't want to hear it. Tell us. So he goes to the drawer. He pulls out 2 notebooks. Muttel the tailor, barely knows how to daven. 2 notebooks. And he goes into the backyard and he builds a fire. He says, Muttel, what are you doing? Said the Hasidim. Today's not Erev Pesach. What are you building a fire for? It's Erev Yom Kippur. And what are the notebooks? He says, I'll tell you. In one notebook, I wrote down every sin that I did. Every night before I went to sleep, I wrote, this I spoke Lashon Hara, in this I spoke Nivel Peh. He wrote a fat book of Basheva, all of the sins that he committed. That's in one notebook. And Muttel, what's in the second notebook? The second notebook, all the tzaros that God gave him. The year, no parnasa, sickness, death, lo yaleinu of a child. Terrible. He wrote it all down. And he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let's make a deal. I did a lot of sins this year. But God, were you so good to me? I had a lot of tzarot in my life. I'm going to burn both books. Let's call it a deal. Says the Baal Shem Tov, that's how you prepare for Yom Kippur. Muttel, even though he knew how to daven, but he didn't know Gemara like the great rabbis, he was so close to God that he can talk to God like a child talks to his father. That's what he said. Yom Kippurim, says the Zohar. God says, you did a lot of sins and you suffered a lot. Let's make a deal. The Mizbach Hazov gets kapara on Yom Kippur. That represents Kavayochel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Isn't that incredible? How much God loves us. We have to talk to him like we talk to our beloved parent. Erev Yom Kippur, people go to graves of tzaddikim, right, Moshe? Chaim Shmulevitz Zatzal would go to the grave of Avshalom. Avshalom, that lowlife, that... You know what Avshalom did? Bathsheba. Avshalom started a civil war against his father, raped his father's concubines. So they said, Rebbe, what are you going to the grave of Avshalom for? Erev Yom Kippur, you go to a grave of tzaddik, you go to the grave of that Rasha. Chaim Shmulevitz said, you know why I go there? Because I'll tell you why. You really want to know? I'll tell you why, buddy. After all Avshalom did to King David, all the tsar he caused him, a civil war against his father. When David heard that he was dead, David should have said, good riddance to that lowlife Soira and Moira. What did David say? Bini Avshalom, halavai, I would have died in your place. 7 times he said it. That normal? After all he did, a civil war, he tried to kill his father, raped his father's wives. After David heard he was dead, he should have said, good riddance. He said, Avshalom bini, 7 times, halavai, I would have died in your place. Because kerachem el valbanim. No matter how you sin, a father can't help but love a child. A parent can't help but love a child. Says Chaim Shmulevitz, that's a human parent. How much God loves us? 1,000,000 times more than any human parent can love a child. So I go to Avshalom's grave, and I'm malamed zchus HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No matter how bad we are, to you, we're not as bad as Avshalom was to his father. And if his father can forgive him after all he did, then certainly, God, you must forgive us. Because you love us much more than any human parent can love a child. And no matter how bad we are, we're not as bad as Avshalom was to his dad. And if his dad can continue to love him after all the evil he did to him, you, God, certainly must continue to love us no matter what we do. And therefore, the great tzaddik, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, would go to the grave of Avshalom. Pimlamit Chus on Klal Yisrael. In Yecheskel chapter 1, he has a mystical vision, Batsheva, of the Ma'aseh Merkava. And he calls the angels Chayot. One of the 10 classes of angels is called Chayot. And it says, V'chayot rotza v'shav. The Chayot ran and they returned. Why do I have to know that the Chayot ran and they returned? I'm into mystical vision. What's the message for us? And why are the angels called Chayot? What does Chayot mean? You wild animal, you. The Navi says, V'chayot ratza v'shav. Even though you act like a chaya, v'shav, you can do tshuva and come back. Even you run away and act like a chaya, but v'shav, God will always take you back. God will always take you back, no matter how bad you are. If you do tshuva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will always take you back. Right? The chayot, that's one of the highest levels of malachim. Even though you act like a chaya, v'shav, you can always what? You can always return. And always come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's never too late. It's never too late. Now, Kol Nidre. We begin the holiest night of the year with Kol Nidre. Now, there are a lot of sins I could think, eating treifa or speaking Lashon Hara is worse than what? Breaking your vow. So why do you say Kol Nidre? All the Lashon Hara that I spoke, and all the nivel peh that I spoke, and all the non-kosher that I ate, that's worse than Kol Nidre. So why do we focus on Kol Nidre? Why do we focus on Kol Nidre? There are worse sins than breaking your vow. So Aaron said, Rav Soloveitchik explains, because every time you do any Aveira, you're also breaking your neder. We all said Nasa v'nishma. We all vowed Nasa v'nishma, Chava, didn't we? So every time you do any Aveira, it also includes what? Kol Nidre. I vowed Nasa v'nishma. What does a Nasa v'nishma mean? I won't speak Lashon Hara. I won't tear toilet paper on Shabbos. I won't flick a bick. It's all Nasa v'nishma. So every Aveira you do also includes what? Breaking your vow to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Pretty amazing. Now, the Ari HaKadosh tells us something amazing. He tells us, we put on the talis on Yom Kippur night, right, Reb Shmuel? Are you going to make a bracha on your talis? You will, right? The Ari HaKadosh says that you should not make a bracha when you put it on your talis on Yom Kippur night. I know Kabbalah and Halacha sometimes clash, and then you have to follow what? Halacha. But the Ari insists that on Yom Kippur night, you put on the talis, you don't make a bracha, because it's not your talis you're putting on. Whose talis is it? And the halacha is you only make a bracha on your own talis. So since it's God's talis, says the Ari, you don't make a bracha. What's the Ari talking about? And therefore there's no bracha. What's the Ari talking about? What do you mean God's talis? Batsheva, it looks like my talis. There's a pasuk in Bereshis. We're reading Pashas Bereshis by Adam and Chava. After their sin, it says they clothed themselves in fig leaves. The latest fashion fig leaves, right? So they were already dressed. So why was it necessary? Vayas Hashem kotnat or Vayalbishem. It says God made for them jackets of leather. Remember the fans, leather jackets? Vayalbishem, and God clothed them. Moshe, they already had fig leaves. Why did God have to make for them kosnat or? And he clothed them. So the Zohar says, kosnat or, it's written with an ayin. But it can also be read kosnat or with what? Aleph. God made for them jackets of light. Vayalbishem. The Zohar says the fig leaves was necessary to cover their physical nakedness. But their godly soul was also naked through their sin. So God made for them kosnas or with an aleph, jackets, garments of light to cover up the darkness of their sin. And it says vayalbishem. What does that mean, vayalbishem? Did they have to be dressed? They were not babies. The Talmud Sanhedrin says Adam and Chava were created, they were 20 years old. A 20-year-old has to be dressed. Why vayalbishem? Says the Zohar, when you dress somebody, Batsheva, you have to embrace them. So even after they sinned, God lovingly clothed them. When you clothe someone, what do? You hug them. Even after they sinned. Adam and Chava were 20 years old. They could dress themselves. So the Zohar says, when you dress someone, you must embrace them. God hugged them even after the chet. And that's exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does to us on Yom Kippur night, says the Ari. God dresses us in his loving garments of light. So the talus is not ours. Whose is it? It's the kosnat or with an aleph. That he lovingly clothed Adam and Chava. That's what he lovingly clothes us on Yom Kippur night. Hugged by the one above. And therefore what? You don't make a bracha. Now, the Talmud says you do tshuva ma'ahava zidonot nasalo kischuyot. You do tshuva because you love God. The aveira becomes what? A mitzvah. Isn't that mind-boggling, Rabbi Yaakov? The aveira becomes a mitzvah. How does the Talmud know that? Every statement Talmud has to have a source, Gershom, in the Tanakh. There's a posik Mishayo Aleph. Im yichatoechem kashanim. If your sins will be red. Why is sin the symbol of red? Because when you sin, you forfeit your life. What's the symbol of life? What's the color of blood? Red. So God tells the prophet Isaiah chapter 1, Im yichatoechem kashanim. If your sins are red like scarlet, kasheleg yalbinu. I will turn them white like snow. Why did God say snow? He could have said like my white shirt. My white shirt is nice and white. Why does God say your sin will come like sheleg? Sheleg is not just white, it sparkles. Ever see snow? We had a big blizzard a year ago, a 100-year blizzard. The snow, Moshe, was, how do you say sparkling in Ivrit? Mavrik, no? So God says if you do tshuva, your sin will not become white. It'll sparkle. Kasheleg yalbinu. The sin becomes what? A mitzvah. And therefore, said Sam Sofer, we do something very strange on Yom Kippur. We sing, ay, 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 Oshamnu, Bagadnu, Gozalnu, I am a ganif, I'm a no good trader, I speak Lashon Hara, ay, 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 Chatanu lefonecha, I'm a no good low life. What are you singing for? Some Sofer says, bury your head in shame, what are you singing for? You know why you're singing? Because you're doing tshuva me'ahava. That Avera becomes what? Isn't that something to sing about? Ay, 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 ay. Dam, dam, da, da, da. Chatanu lefonecha. Yes, I'm singing because I'm doing tshuva me'ahava. So now my sin is kashelek. It's not white. It sparkles. Snow sparkles. How much God loves us. That's why we're singing. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're too big to fail. God invests his chelik elahai mimal. This week's parsha, ki chelik Hashem amo. God is a portion of his people. So God has to protect his investment. So God wants to clean and cuddle us and wrap us in his holy embrace when? Yom Kippur night. Right? And therefore what? The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says something. Rosh Hashanah, page 17. Kadosh Baruch Hu wrapped himself in a talis k'shliach tzibur. Shenesatet HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'shliach tzibur b'talit. And he taught Moshe Rabbeinu the Yid Gimel Midas HaRachamim. Kadosh Baruch Hu wrapped himself in a talit, and he said, Hashem, Hashem, Kel, Rachum, V'chanun, teaching Moshe what? The 13 attributes of mercy. Says the Marsha, which talis did God wrap himself in, Moshe? Which talis? Says the Marsha, Rosh Hashanah Yud Zayin. I'll read it to you. Soda Inyan, you like Soda. Soda Inyan, the secret of the matter, Michachmei HaMikibolim, says the Marsha, the secret of the matter, Michachmei HaMikibolim, which talis did God wrap himself in? Ba'oto talit shel Briat HaOlam. In the talit of Briat HaOlam. That's the talit God wrapped himself in when he taught God the Yid Gimel Midas HaRachamim. Says the Ari HaKadosh. What talit is that? What talit shel Briat HaOlam? Every human being is an olam katan. Every human being is a miniature universe. Says the holy Ari. What talis did God wrap himself in? The talis of tshuva. When God created the world, he created tshuva first. Every Yom Kippur night, God wraps us in the talit of tshuva. The talit where a person is able to recreate himself, Moshe. I think it's called Back to the Future. We say the past is dead and buried. Right? It's not true. A Jew can go back to the past and recreate himself or rejuvenate himself. Reju. Get it? So Ria Kodesh says, that's a soda inyan. You hear this? That talis of Briat HaOlam, that we can create a new you. God says, I'll wrap you in the talis, but you've got to want to be recreated. Al Baal Tshuva is a different person. The Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, Mishane Shemo Ani Acher. I'm not the same person. I'm a new person. I'm not the guy that did that dirty deed, Michael. It looks like me. It smells like me, but it's not me. So says the Rambam. Mishane Shemo Ani Acher. I'm a new person. I recreated myself, Batsheva, with the talit of Briat HaOlam that God lovingly wraps us in when every Yom Kippur night, and therefore the Ria Kodesh says that what? That you don't make a bracha on it. Right? I like the song. What about a person commits adultery and he gives birth to a mamzer? How can he do tshuva? The mamzer is in the world. So the Rambam says, I'm not the guy that produced that mamzer. I look like the guy and I smell like him, but I'm not the guy that produced that mamzer. That's the koyach hatshuva, where you reinvent and recreate yourself. You go back to the future with the talis sabriyat olam that God lovingly wraps us in, which He wrapped the kosnat or aleph on Adam and Chava. I'm not the guy that did that dirty deed. You reinvent yourself, Chava. Isn't that awesome? Who loves you, baby? How much God loves us. Starting over. You don't have to be crushed and weighed down with the sin. We all do terrible things in our lives. But it's not me. I'm a different person. Wow. I'm not finished yet. Don't clap yet. I'm not finished yet. Yes? What did I want to say? What?
And I used the extended version.
What?
I'm just going to ask if
Yes.
you have a different soul, and that's why when we do tshuva, that
No, it's you rejuvenate, you reinvent yourself, you recreate yourself. That's the koyach hatshuva that God wraps you on Kippur night. That the Marsha says, "Ba'oto talit, so the inyan lechachmei hakibalim." That's the talis of the universe. Every person is a universe. I reinvent myself. I'm a new person. And tshuva ma'ahava, all the averis become what? Mitzvot. Who taught that? Yuma, page 86. Who said that? Shimon ben Lakish. He was like Meir Lansky. Shimon ben Lakish. He was Meir Lansky. And Rabbi Yochanan said, what are you wasting your time with the Jewish mafia? Join my yeshiva and I'll give you a date with my sister. She's Miss Universe. And he fell in love with her. She's beautiful. And he became the great Rish Lakish. And he says, Tshuva ma'ahava, zedonot nasala geschuyot. Did he do Tshuva ma'ahava? Gershom. Did he do Tshuva ma'ahava? Is he an expert? No, he did Tshuva because he loved the girl. He loved the pretty face. She looked like Miss Israel. And because of her, he did Tshuva. So how could he say it's Tshuva ma'ahava? So Rav Soloveitchik explains that Tshuva ma'ahava is not overnight. It starts with a beautiful face. And you graduate to Tshuva ma'ahava. First, it has to be Tshuva for any reason. A beautiful girl, a good shidduch. You want people to like you. But like my Shlokish says, look at me. I fell for a beautiful face, and I admit it. But I graduated to Tshuva ma'ahava. The great Shlokish. Start off with selfish reason, but then what? B'toch shelo lishma, ba lishma. So let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's do tshuva mehava, and all of our averot will become what? Mitzvot. Yes, Nachama.
What about the mamzer? It's not his.
It's not me. The mamzer, but I'm not the dad. It looks like me, but it's not me.
Okay, but the
Looks like me,
mamzer
right?
cannot correct himself.
So the mamzer can be the chief rabbi of Israel.
But
The mamzer, the only thing he can't do is marry a Jewish girl. You know that? A born Jewish girl. He can marry a Giyoris. A mamzer can marry a Giyoris. A mamzer can get shlishi. And a mamzer can be the chief rabbi of Israel. The only thing he can't do is marry a born Jewish girl.
if his parents were both Jewish,
A mamzer can marry a Giyoris or another mamzer.
why?
The Mishnah says in Masechta Horiot, if you're on the Titanic, there's one seat left on the lifeboat. The Kohen Gadol Amoretz and the Talmud Chacham, the mamzer. Who gets the seat? Mamzer Talmud Chacham, Koidim the Kohen Gadol Amoretz. A mamzer can be the chief rabbi of Israel and get shlishi and sit by the wall. You only can't marry a born Jewish girl, that's all.
Why can he marry a Gerah?
You can marry a Giyoris, because the Torah says so. The only thing is, you just can't marry a born Jewish girl. You can marry a Giyoris. And Mamzer Talmud Chacham comes before a high priest who's an Amoretz. Mamzer Talmud Chacham. That's the koyach of Tshuva and Torah. Thank you very much. I say Kaddish Rabbanan.